hello Booktube. I mentioned yesterday that I would not be doing any videos specifically dedicated to the 2021 Booker Prize. And I mentioned why. I mentioned the reason was because I consider that this prize and all literary prizes this year have been completely infiltrated by current year identity politics, which crowds out all other considerations, especially literary considerations. It's patriarchal and colonial even to suggest that different individuals might have different levels of literary ability. That's insulting on its face. So of course the idea that you would have a literary prize designed to call attention to the best of the batch doesn't work at all. And I leave my email on every video so that you can feel free to email me about anything that's on your mind. I get questions about all kinds of things, and it's wonderful. I absolutely love it. Some people, a tiny fraction, don't seem to get the nature of email. If you send me a 2,000-word email, you can count on me not responding. I doubt I will even read from one end to the other. Because that's work. That's the equivalent of us meeting on the sidewalk and you talking for 2 consecutive hours before you even let me speak or indicate in any way that you're interested in hearing from me. It's just a completely flat-footed thing to do. Likewise, if someone emails me and says, "Hey, I love your Booktube channel. I saw that you like to get emails from people. I have this thing I would like you to read and critically respond to." That is not an email. That's work. And you're not offering to pay me. and occasionally other people will commit emailing faux pas, tiny emailing faux pas. The foremost of which I would say, for me, just because it bugs me, is for somebody to send me a link to an article or a video or something like that alone. So you're wrapping the link to whatever it is that you want me to see around a brick and throwing it through my front window. Not even a hello in the email, just the link. I tend to delete those things sight unseen. I usually don't click through them. That is the behavior, after all, of malware, not of a person. But most people, 99%, get how to do it. And I got lots of responses to my comments yesterday from a lot of people who it was touching. We've developed a kind of relationship here, and a lot of people were disappointed because they wanted to know which books on that list I might like or not like. They want to know if they say, okay, you're not interested in the Booker Prize, but you are going to read the books. Any of them have English publications, American publications. You're going to read them, and I am interested in the Booker Prize, and I'd like to know which ones get your thumbs up and which ones don't. That's legitimate. And so I may comment on the books in time, but in the meantime, quite a few people emailed and said, "Well, what about commenting on some other prize, some other literary prize?" And I had to reprise to them what I basically said in that video yesterday, which is that I think all the prizes are equally infiltrated. There isn't any pure prize, except the ones that are so minor nobody cares about. Nobody cares about the Wolfson Prize for History or anything like that. 10 people listening to me will care about that. But the general interest literary prizes, I would say the general interest literary prizes, there are probably 6 or 7, and they've all been completely infiltrated. You can use what I mentioned yesterday, the progressive stack. You can use that to determine the shortlist and the winner of every single one of those prizes. Now, if I'm wrong about that, I'm wrong about that, but I'm not. And so there really isn't any other prize I could go to, and 2 of you I don't think know each other, because you're emailing from different countries, and said, well, could you talk about previous prizes, some sort of previous prize? I guess because prize chatter is fun. But those requests came at the same time that a friend, a longtime viewer of this channel, sent me a link to a channel I had never encountered before, a Booktube channel in Spanish that I had never encountered before. Ricardo Carrión has a Booktube channel, and in a recent video he talks about the Nobel Prize in literature. And this longtime viewer watched his video, very thoughtfully translated the questions in his tag. He makes a Nobel Prize in literature tag, and it's very good. This longtime viewer of the channel very, very kindly translated the questions for me. That wasn't entirely necessary, but talk about your heart being in the right place. And I wanted to do that tag today as a kind of a placeholder for all the prize tags, the prize chatter that I won't be doing on this channel, or unless I change my mind, unless unless one of the major literary prizes, the Booker is one of the most major literary prizes in the Western world, unless one of these major literary prizes that I am calling actually surprises me and does not use the progressive stack in order to determine the shortlist and the winner, I think that it's depressingly certain that they will. So I'm not counting on being surprised. But in the meantime, I thought I would do Ricardo's Nobel Prize in Literature tag. It's actually a good one, and I've copied the translated questions into the document here, into this tag, so that if you want to do this, I'd naturally love to do that. I'll leave a link to Ricardo's channel, and I would love it if you would do this. It's a great discussion of the Nobel Prize in Literature. So question number 1 is, what do you like and dislike about the Nobel Prize in Literature? Nice general way to start the question. What I like about it is that nominally, anyway, it is for a body of work rather than for an individual work. There's a kind of global, fittingly enough, a kind of global look to at least the DNA of the Nobel Prize that says, let's look at the world's major literary figures, not a major literary work. Let's look at the world's major literary figures and award accordingly. I like that. If that DNA proved true, if the reward actually worked along those lines, I would think that was incredibly valuable. I should say that it mostly hasn't, and it mostly doesn't, but that's a great idea. And what I most dislike about the Nobel Prize in Literature has been manifest for 5 or 6 years now, maybe even a little longer than that. It was 10 years ago. You might have noticed, if you're paying any attention to the Nobel Prize, you might have noticed that suddenly you started hearing people win the Nobel Prize about whom you had never heard anything. I've heard this many, many times from people who said to me in the wake of one winner after another, I am a bookish person in a couple of different languages. I'm constantly reading, and I've never heard of this person. Or, I've heard of this person, they strike me as unbelievably minor, someone who does not deserve the Nobel Prize. If that happened once, okay, fine. The Nobel Prize Committee has their own reading taste, their own estimates of the value or the importance of a particular author. That's just fine. But it seemed to happen. I am one of those people who, as arrogant as it might sound, I read a lot, and I pay attention to the literary world. And it happened to me, too, that a couple of times the Nobel Prize would be announced, and I would say, who is that? And that is not the reaction that you should get from extremely bookish people when you announce your prize winner. And again, like I said, if it happens once, that's fine. If it happens twice, that's fine. But if it keeps happening, I started to think, this is the Nobel Prize Committee trying to capture a headline cycle. The Nobel Prize Committee's remit should only be to award the Nobel Prize to worthy recipients. They should not care about the headlines. They should not care about making news. They should not care about people in cafes or literary society saying, boy, the Nobel sure has been out there lately, hasn't it? They shouldn't care about anything like that. That debases the prize for them to care about the headline cycle. And I more and more got the impression, okay, well, you know, the list of the world's greatest living literary figures is not long. In any year, it will not be long. It will not be longer than 15 names. If 4 years in a row, 5 years in a row, you're picking someone who's not only not on that list, but nowhere near it, then that's your goal. That's not happenstance anymore. That's not a difference in literary opinion anymore. That's you trying to be counterintuitive, trying to be rad or whatnot. And I naturally disliked that. And I thought, okay, well, prize committees change very slowly, but they do. It's possible that that's just a phase that the prize is going through and that the committee will change and get better. The committee will wake up from that and say, okay, that was crazy. That is debasing our coinage. Our coinage is to be slightly remote, slightly august, the most revered literary prize in the world. If we chase headlines, we'll lose that, and that's our only thing. So let's stop doing that. I kind of hoped that that would happen, and then in 2016, the Nobel Prize Committee gave the prize in literature to Bob Dylan, a coked-up American songwriter who neither wrote nor is able to read any of the lyrics that he badly sang and is famous for badly singing. You could not come up with a greater travesty of a literary award than to award it to an illiterate who did not write the works for which he's credited. That is the ultimate grab for a headline cycle. The ultimate grab, unless you're going to give it to Sinead O'Connor or something like that. And that is when I broke with the Nobel Prize. That is when the thing that I dislike about the prize, this chasing after headline cycles, became etched in stone. I would need to be sure that all of the Nobel Prize committee members who did that, who were on the committee when they gave it to Dylan in 2016, I would have to be sure, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that all of the members of that prize committee are no longer on the prize committee or in any kind of communication with the people who are. And the only way to do that is for every member of the Nobel Prize committee in 2016 to be dead. So when every member of the Nobel Prize committee in 2016 is dead, so they cannot communicate with anyone on the current committee, then I might start caring about the Nobel Prize anymore. But until then, that 2016 ended it for me. I couldn't care less who they give it to, and that's going to come up again in this tag. But that's number one. Question number two is, which Nobel Prize winner have you read the most books from? And I naturally went to Wikipedia, as everybody does for this tag, because you want your memory jogged. And I was running down the list and ran into a problem with this particular question. Because there are a handful of people who've won the Nobel Prize for whom I have read everything. So the answer to the question, who have you read the most from, becomes a question of what do we count as a work? Where are we parsing? Have I found everything? That sort of thing. I want to give a little list here. There's Rudyard Kipling. There's William Butler Yeats. There's John Galsworthy, Eugene O'Neill, the Dudebro Trinity of Faulkner, Hemingway, and Steinbeck, Saul Bellow, Pablo Neruda, Wole Soyinka, who would not have been on the case for me, except I had to research his life and works extensively, probably 5 or 6 years ago, and that involved reading everything. But also Toni Morrison, Seamus Heaney. These are authors for whom I firmly believe I have read everything they've ever written, and I don't know which one wins out in terms of numbers. Certainly in terms of a prolific output, George Bernard Shaw would come out ahead, I believe, of all of these. But by that same token, I'm pretty sure I have not read all of Bernard Shaw. I've read a lot of him. And it may be ironic, he's not on my list, but ironically it may be that he is the actual answer to the question. But one way or another, I'm thinking it has to be one of these, and of that list, I'm thinking probably Kipling. One way or another, I've read a lot of Nobel laureates. There are quite a few on the list that I've read barely anything. But there are quite a few where I've read a lot, and there's this handful where I think I've read everything. But I'm curious to know about you. Oh my, I want to hear the answers to these questions from everybody. Oh my. Question number 3, which authors do you think should have won the prize? This also will occasion a trip to Wikipedia or other websites, because there have been an infinitude of articles about famous authors that did not win the Pulitzer Prize. There's one not talking just about current odds leaders, people who have never won and who are still alive and in the running to win, because that doesn't matter anymore. If you're going to give it to Dylan, you can give it to the guy who wrote the TV jingle that you just listened to. So that doesn't matter anymore. But once upon a time, the odds makers in London, Ladbrokes, did matter. It did matter who was in front, and those names would always head a list that would then look back at historical injustices. I don't think there's much disagreement here. Is there? I mean, if you read those articles, are you going to come up with a different name? If you look at the list of authors, of famous authors who've never won the Nobel Prize in Literature, I'm pretty sure the number one name that sticks out there is Tolstoy. I'm pretty sure that he does. There are a lot of great names on that list, but is there any greater than Tolstoy? I don't think so. So I'm going to say Tolstoy should have won the Nobel Prize in Literature. If you're not going to give it to Tolstoy, then what are you doing? But anyway, number 4 is, how many winners have you read? Again, this will require a trip to Encyclopedia Britannica or whatever. There have been 117 winners, and out of those 117 winners, I have read 101. So Ricardo's question, mention a book from each, is not going to work. It's not going to list off 101 books, but it's a lot. But the thing that surprised me is that I thought it was higher than that. I thought my total was almost complete. I have not read anything by the very first winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature, which is kind of shameful considering that I'm of 100% Irish descent and his first name is Sully. But he's not Irish. The prize would have to wait a while before it came to its senses. So I don't think I've read anything by that Sully, whose name is Sully, but he's not Irish. But of the others, I was pretty sure. I was going down the list and I was thinking, yes, yes, yes. But I was amazed at how many times they're saying, nope, nope, never. So well, I've read 117 of those. Certainly I could recommend many, many, many books. It's been my experience that, unlike, for instance, the National Book Award, it's been my experience that people who win the Nobel Prize in Literature have often written many good books. The famous curse of the Nobel Prize in Literature is that you win it and never do any work of distinction again. So maybe I'm happy that Tolstoy didn't win. But anyway, prompt number 5 is recommend one book from a winner. And here I want to, I'll mention 2 things. I want to second Ricardo's own suggestion here, which is Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann, the greatest novel of the 20th century. An example of the Nobel Prize, getting it just right. If you have not read Magic Mountain, even in English, I strongly, strongly recommend it. And it's fascinating to watch Ricardo's video and see all of the Spanish language versions of these books, some of which have designs that would never fly in America. It would be such interesting designs. And in impeccable shape. Ricardo keeps his books in perfect condition. Wish I could learn that trick. But in addition to that, I also want to recommend from 1933, the collected poems of William Butler Yeats. I don't know where you stand in the way of poetry, but you should make Yeats' acquaintance. And the 1933 volume, the collected poems, is a great place to start. So I'll recommend those 2, Magic Mountain and William Butler Yeats. Then question number 6 is, or prompt number 6 is mention 6 books from winners that you want to read. And here I couldn't narrow it down to 6, or rather gussy it up to 6, because for me the answer is pretty much the same all across the authors who from whom I have not read everything, and including the authors some of whom I have not read anything or very little. And that is, the answer is always the same, and it's not going to crop up in their author biography. Usually it's not, or not completely. Almost all of the authors on the list for the Nobel Prize in Literature supplemented their income for the whole of their lives by writing book reviews. Little book squibs, book prefaces, book afterwards, book essays, that sort of thing. A lot of times once you win a major literary prize, you consider that kind of stuff to be hack work, and you sort of airbrush it out of your CV, but you shouldn't. It's still you in that work. And I am certain that if I were to go to, like, for instance, the 10 or so authors that I haven't read or haven't read much from, I'm certain that every one of them has at least one collection of book criticism, of book writing. I would love to read that from all of them. I'm sure, for instance, that Shaw has some volumes of that I haven't read. Maybe there are a couple of volumes from Mario Vargas Llosa. Maybe he has volumes like that just never translated into English. I could easily understand that. You would bring out a volume like that in Spanish, but think there was no market for it in English, and you'd probably be right. There are probably many, many volumes like that, and that's what I would most like to read from any of them. The fiction can wait. But the collections of literary essays, that I would love to read. Then the next prompt, number 7, is the last book that you read from a winner. I had to think about this for a bit. And it's from 2016. It's The Moravian Night by Peter Hankin, who won, I think, the year after, or a couple of years after than that, and sparked a huge controversy because of a lot of his non-literary opinions, a lot of his publicly expressed opinions. I was not impressed by. I read The Moravian Night in English in 2016, and I was not impressed by it. It seemed to. I didn't notice anything politically noxious in the book, but it just sat there for me. It was just fairly unremarkable. So as far as I know, that's the last book I read by anybody who won the Nobel Prize. Then question number 8 is a book that you want to read from a winner that was recommended to you by a booktuber. I'm afraid there are none. I've mentioned this before once or twice on this channel. I once thought that it maybe was a little bit touchy, but you all understand exactly what I'm saying, that no insult or condescension is intended. But I very seldom get that kind of recommendation from BookTube. And I get lots of other things from BookTube. I get things that I consider invaluable from BookTube, but I don't usually get that, and that has never happened. As far as I know, that has never happened. And then prompt number 9, to send us off with a bang, is who do you think will win the prize this year? And my answer would be twofold. One is that it absolutely does not matter. The Nobel Prize has no literary cachet whatsoever. They gave it to Bob Dylan, so they could give it to literally anybody. Your literary accomplishments, your literary body of work, the kinds of things that used to make a serious judging committee actually seriously consider someone, those things don't matter anymore. What matters is that the choice be weird, controversial, flagrantly unmerited, so that people will be talking about the Nobel Prize, so that the Nobel Prize will claim headlines. And as long as that's true, it could be anybody. There are quite a few names on the list that there's always a list that goes around. There's always a list of about 15 or 16 names of literarily eminent people who have not won. Literary eminent people who are still alive, but who are every year getting closer and closer to being that kind of a James Joyce, Leo Tolstoy snub of the Nobel Prize, where they're getting closer and closer to having their name added to that list of prominent literary figures who never won a Nobel Prize. And every year the Nobel is just flirting more and more with that. There are a handful of those people. Will one of them win this year? I doubt it. I doubt it very much. I'd be willing to bet, if I had to guess. I'm trying to get out of the guessing game when it comes to literary prizes in 2021. But if I had to guess, I would guess that it will be a complete unknown, and that they will be picked for their unknown status and also for their place on the progressive stack, their intersectionality Dungeons and Dragons score. How high is their intersectionality Dungeons and Dragons score? It'll be those two things that will determine it. And if that's the case, then how on earth could I guess? I have no idea. I could list 4 or 5 people, 4 or 5 writers alive today that I think deserve it, on the basis of their work, that I think deserve it. But will they win? No, I doubt it very much. I doubt it very much. So there you go. That is the Nobel Prize tag from a Spanish language booktube channel that I'd never encountered before. I'll leave a link to Ricardo's channel. And I'll leave these questions in case you feel like wading in yourself. I would love to hear your answers. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, Booktube.